So hi, Janet. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
You've seen quite a few of these over lockdown and everything, so you know how they work.
I think I've seen all of them, yes, and some of them more than once. Yeah, I've always been very impressed.
So just going back to your early kind of family history, where you were born and that kind of stuff.
Well, I wasn't really from a particularly musical family, but I was born in Richmond, so I was quite lucky to live in a nice place. But we didn't have much money, but we had all lovely walks around us to the park, to the river, to Richmond Green, and a nice shopping centre nearby. So I was happy about that. I was in the school choir at primary school. I've got pictures of me in it, probably when I was about 8, 9, 10. And I do remember we had some big Richmond festival, and each individual school had to practice at their own schools. And then they put us all together. I can't remember what the song was. It may have been a hymn or anything like that, but I'll always remember when we were in this huge venue somewhere. It may have been somebody else's school. It was a much bigger hall with all these different primary schools put together. And as the music started and we all started singing, I was totally overwhelmed with the sound of this huge sound of us singing, and it shot through my body. The excitement shot through my body. So I suppose that's my first early memory of, we had music in the house, people playing. Well, we didn't have a record player, actually. No, I think they had the radio on, that's right. Billy Cotton's band show every Sunday lunchtime, Wakey Wakey and all of that. But the experience in that choir, when we got together with all the others, was kind of really a buzz of huge excitement to me.
Your kind of family history, your father's from Poland, is that right?
Well, he's not from Poland. He was born in London, but his parents his grandfather was from Warsaw. Sorry, my grandfather was from Warsaw. He was a Polish Jewish tailor. And he came to London before the First World War, apparently. He came over, got away from the pogrom, and his two brothers went to Paris, which is why I now have a French second cousin.
Great.
I just remember on Sunday lunchtime, we always had the Billy Cotton band show on, but I know my father liked Harry Belafonte and other similar singers. But I don't remember. Oh, my aunt had a record player. We lived in the same house, but later on, they bought a record player for me because they knew I wouldn't survive without one. After my visit to hospital, where I was ward disc jockey, I had new records coming in every week, and I didn't know till I got home that they'd bought this record player for me.
So what were you in hospital for?
I had a major spinal operation, so I was in plaster. Well, I was in hospital for 8 months, and in one ward in plaster for 6 or 7 months before I came out of the plaster and had a bright brace put on instead for another 6 months to go back to school in.
So apart from when you were singing in the school choir, when did you start to get into singing? Was it something you did all your life, or was it something you did later?
I don't remember doing it when I was young, to be honest, not singing at home or anything. My mother used to sing to us, I think, sometimes. Because I remember some of the old songs she used to sing. What's that song called? My Baby, not My Baby Just Cares For. There's another one. It's in the jazz repertoire now. She used to sing it. It'll come back to me. Anyway, I just remember more in my teens. Of course, I love pop music. I love the latest hits. And when I was in hospital, everybody had a favourite. Everybody had a crush on somebody. So I thought, well, I have to choose Billy Fury because I liked his Halfway to Paradise. So I put I Love Billy, I had a I Love Billy all over my plaster. I didn't even think he was good looking, but I just wanted to be like the others. But, and John Layton and, oh gosh, that was such a long time ago. Anyway, yeah, so I like it, all other kids, teenagers, I love pop music. I didn't get into, I didn't really have any introduction to classical music when I was young. And jazz, I loved the sound of it before I even knew it was jazz, when I heard it in films, but I didn't realise till afterwards. I didn't think of it. It's just that kind of music that I like the sound of.
And
yeah.
did you start going to see any live music at all when you were kind of like your teens or?
I remember going to see Bobby V because my sister was passionate about Bobby V, and he came to Kingston. It was a big cinema. It's one that's covered in sheets right now and has been for ages. I think it was there. And I didn't really go to many things until a bit later when I was in my early 20s, I think. I didn't go to pop concerts, but I started to, through my boss, because I worked for EMI Records, a subsidiary of EMI Records, I was introduced to, well, I was already, yes, I had joined a musical theatre group when I was 19, because I met somebody whose son was in it, and I think she wanted to pair me up with her son, because she didn't stop talking about her son, and she practically dragged me in to join the group. But I never got together with her son, but I stayed in the group for a few years until it disbanded, and I absolutely loved it. So I was starting to get into musical theatre, and I had an acting part in a Noel Coward show, which I've never forgotten. I still remember the first line.
What is it?
They've all gone into dinner. Come on.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So your acting that kind of carried on, didn't it? You did quite a few shows. I think.
Well, I did a few shows with that group. I'm embarrassed to say what it was called, the Merrymakers. It was run by a couple who lived in Sheen Barnes area. And she was a piano teacher, a bit dotty, and she ran this drama group. And her husband worked in Whitehall. He was a high civil servant of some kind, I don't know what, and he directed it. And after I got that part, well, from the beginning, I loved it. And every time we did a show, we had a party afterwards at someone's house. And after that, I felt so flat, and I just kept thinking about the show, and can't we do it again? Can't we do it again? It was like something big had ended, because we were rehearsing every single night before the show, on the week of the show. And it was always on like 3 nights at the end of the week. And I used to take a day off from work in the middle of that week just to catch up on some rest and sleep, otherwise I would have been exhausted. Yeah, so that was musicals. And when I got my job at World Records, part of EMI, my boss, Michael, who was also a very good friend as the years went on, he was passionate about musicals. And in fact, he wrote a book about musicals before he died. But he also liked all the other music. He loved classical music, and he was a ballet critic. So I was introduced to the ballet, the Royal Opera House, from 21, and all sorts of other lovely things. And I started listening to classical music avidly at home on my new stereo record player. And my life changed, really. So it's like a whole new thing opening out.
Yeah. You used to go to ballet, what, once a week, every month?
Well, I went to opening nights with him quite frequently. Saw Fontaine and Nureyev more than once. I can't remember how many times now. And to be honest, once I got really into it, I'd go other nights too and get the cheap. I'd go on the good seats when I was with Michael. We always got very good seats. But then I'd go back the next night and see the ballet again for 50p, standing in the behind the stool circle.
50 pence?
It was then 50p for standing. It wouldn't be now. I don't know what it is now, if there is such a thing as standing there now. But I was completely hooked on it. But it partly because I knew people in it, that made it even more interesting for me.
Yeah, because you have some friends or some former dancers.
Yes, another person who came to work with us in our department called Austin Bennett was an ex-ballet dancer, and his wife was a principal ballerina at the time. And so every time she danced the leading role in Swan Lake, we all used to go together, and we used to take flowers. And in those days, you were allowed to throw flowers at the stage. I don't think you are now. Yeah, so that was terribly exciting for me, going backstage and seeing all the dancers. And yeah, I mean, I was in my early 20s then, yeah. So
tell me about your role at World Records. What did you used to do, and who did you used to meet?
Well, I was secretary in the marketing department, and then I left. I was there for a few years. Then the company went through a dodgy patch in the early 70s, and like I think a lot of things did then, and the work became less interesting. I had to do quite a lot of work that wasn't really my normal role, and the atmosphere wasn't good. So I decided to leave for a bit and see how I got on, and I ended up working in EMI Classical Division in Wardour Street in Soho. And I worked there for 6 months, but then I left to go off to be an au pair in Austria, which was a totally different thing. But while I was at the Classical Division, we got regular tickets to go to the Royal Festival Hall all together and see fantastic musicians, orchestras. And, gosh, it's such a long time ago. I can't even remember all their names now. But
you would bump into a lot of musicians and things in the office, or they would call up?
Well, no, we had people calling in, and the most visiting us. The Desert Island Discs guy who founded Desert Island Discs, and his name's mentioned every time it's on. And now I can't remember that either.
I'll put it up on the screen after. At the bottom.
But he came to visit. The most exciting thing of all was Stephen Sondheim came to visit.
Oh, wow.
And I was introduced to him and shook hands with him because I've been a fan of his for years and still am. He's died now, unfortunately, but yeah, I thought he was amazing. But then Michael, my boss, was passionate about his music and his musicals, and he used to fly to New York for a weekend just to see his new musicals. But I saw a lot of his musicals in London, particularly loved Sweeney Todd, which is a bit gruesome, I know, but I love the music from it. But I didn't sing. I sang along with things. I used to sing along with West Side Story and all sorts of musicals and try and hit the top notes and imagine I was on a stage. But it was like a child's dream, really.
I remember you told me that you were quite shy as a child.
Very shy.
So how did that manifest into you being able to do your plays and acting and then stuff like that?
I was shy all through primary school. In fact, when I first started school, I turned my back to the front in assembly. And when we had to answer the register, I had to whisper. I couldn't answer out. I could say yes out loud, but I couldn't say yes, Miss whoever. If I had to say her name as well, then I had to whisper. I really remember that. And in the playground, I often stood by a wall with my face facing the wall. I did play with other children at other times, but I was often so shy, I didn't mix with others, and I stood facing the wall. But that was in the early primary years. But in the second year at secondary school, I became a bit of a rebel, and I had the strap.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I went from being ultra shy to lashing out and being silly and getting the strap. We used to
What
have
did you get the strap for?
being cheeky to a teacher.
So they hit you on your hand or something?
Yeah, I had to stand in the corridor with everybody watching, and the headmaster came out with a strap. I can't remember how many it was. The boys had it on the backside, and the girls had it on the hand. Gruesome in those days. Terrible when I think back on it.
That's brilliant. So your world records, that was in Wardour Street, was it, did you say?
Well, the world records was in Richmond on the Green.
Okay, but
near
the classical
theatre.
division was in...
Classical division, which I was only in for 6 months, was in Wardour Street, Film House in Wardour Street. Yeah.
And then you went off to Austria.
And I went off to Austria through a girl, a friend I met at the job in the classical division. She'd been an au pair for this family in the mountains in Tyrol, just above Innsbruck. And they got in touch with her to say, can you find us a new au pair urgently? And she caught me on a morning when I'd had terrible trouble getting in on the bus from, I was living in Kensington then, I think. Earl's Court part of Kensington, not the glamorous bit. And I was renting a place, a room in a house, and it was chaos getting up and getting into work every day, and I was getting fed up with everything. And it sounded appealing, so I said, I'll go. And then I realised I was probably serious. I thought it was a joke at first. So a few weeks later, I was off to Austria, and that was a real culture shock. And when I arrived in April, it was already quite sunny and all the flowers were coming out here. And I got there and it was covered in snow and I didn't have any of the right footwear. I had so much to learn living there, yeah. So it was a real culture shock at the beginning. It took me a while to adapt. By the time my 6 months was up, I couldn't bear to leave, so I stayed another 3 so I could spend Christmas and New Year with them. So I was there 9 months altogether. Came back just in time for the 3-day week in England. It was so dull and dismal.
So you wanted to go straight back again?
I wanted to go back again, yeah, but I knew I couldn't. No, so I wrote. There wasn't no internet or anything like that then. I wrote them long letters regularly every week. It was like a report on my week and how terrible it was and how boring it was, and it made them laugh apparently because I was describing the office I was in a temporary job and the boring person I was working for, and I kept answering the phone in German. And he looked horrified. He was an accountant, I think, and it was only a 1 week's job. But, oh, God, I was looking at my watch all the time. It was so boring. And I wrote to them and described it all, and they said they loved my letters. It really made them laugh. I can't remember how I described it, but whatever it was. At the time, it seemed funny to them.
So you didn't go back to the previous job you had with Michael?
Well, not when I first came back. I got a job up in town in Baker Street area I wanted to get a job where I could use my German because I'd been in Austria for 9 months. I'd been doing classes at Innsbruck University and speaking German. I wanted to get a job where it involved German speaking, but didn't really work out. I got a job at a semi-civil service place up near Baker Street where they found assistants from all over Europe, language assistants. So if a school wanted a French assistant for their French classes or an Italian. So they wanted people working there who had different knowledge of different languages. But I never had an opportunity to speak German once when I was there. And then one day I got a phone call from one of my ex-bosses, Alstyne, saying, wouldn't it be nice to be back in Richmond on a lovely day like this instead of travelling up to town? And I said, well, why are you saying that? And he said, well, we'd like you to come back. We've got a job for you.
Oh, brilliant.
So I went back in a different position. I was production coordinator, which meant proofreading all the records sleeves and the print when they were printed onto the record covers, chasing up printers. Oh yes, and getting in touch with sleeve note writers, commissioning sleeve note writers, and I was a bit, instead of thinking of EMI or my company and trying to save them money, I was always on the side of the sleeve note writer who was struggling. There was one called Brian Rust, and he told me, he's probably dead, he's been dead for years now, but he was on the radio a lot. And he said, Janet, can you put the money up a bit, please? We've had to have roof repairs. We've had rain coming in through the roof. So I went and begged my bosses, please, can we put the money up? And they said, whose side are you on? But they did in the end agree to it. And when I left, when I was expecting my daughter, Sarah, he did a request for me. He put, I can't remember which program it was. I think it was on Radio 2. And I can't remember which piece of music it was, I'm afraid, but probably something from one of the old musicals, because we were working on the Pennies from Heaven. Yes, the Pennies from Heaven. That was a very exciting part of my work, when we released the Pennies from Heaven LPs to time with the BBC series by Dennis Potter. And we were invited to the BBC. We met all the stars, and we had we watched the whole series, a preview, and then we had a little reception afterwards, a buffet reception, and met all the stars.
Oh, so it was Bob Hoskins, wasn't it?
Bob Hoskins, Cheryl Campbell, and the other women. It's gone.
Yeah.
That's the trouble, the names go. Yeah, Bob Hoskins, he's been dead for quite a long time now, hasn't he? Cheryl Campbell, I think, is still around.
I'm not sure.
Anyway.
So you'd now got married and had...
Oh, by then I was married. Yeah, I forgot about marriage. Yeah, that bit. I missed that bit out, sorry. Yeah, I married somebody I met through my boss, actually, through Michael. And that was in 1977. And he was really keen on music. He's really passionate about classical music, but he also liked some musicals and so on. And he played the piano a bit. But yeah, so for that Pennies from Heaven time was when I was married. So it was about 78, I think. It was because I left in 79 to have Sarah at the end of 79. So it was probably around 77, 78. Yeah. But it was so exciting. I had a lot of parties then too. Oh yes, and when Pennies from Heaven actually started the series on BBC, because there was no iPlayer then, you had to wait each week to see the next one. We all met at my boss's flat in Chelsea, and we had special T-shirts with Pennies from Heaven all over them, and we'd all watch it together. When I say all, various colleagues, my ex-husband, and Joyce Stone, who died a few years ago now. She was the widow of a famous dance band leader, Lou Stone, from the 30s. And we all got together in Michael's flat. I've got photos of it somewhere with our T-shirts on to watch each episode of Pennies from Heaven.
Great. So you had a real kind of cultural awakening and social.
Oh,
very
much.
sociable and also into culture. So you were kind of going to lots of things, meeting lots of close
very
friends.
Much. It changed my life. If I hadn't walked into the agency that day and when they said, because when I left Secretarial College, I needed to build up this was when I was 19, and my father had just died then too. But I had to build up my confidence. So I wanted to do some temp work because I thought that was a good way to build up confidence. So I did 3 months of temping. And then it dried up because the season had finished, and I walked into the agency and she said, sorry, there's no more temp work. We'll have to give you a permanent job. She said, we've got one here at a record company round the corner. So I went for the interview and I got the job. And that changed so many things.
Amazing.
I don't know whether I'd have ever done any of the rest of this if I hadn't got that job.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So did you give up working when you had your children?
Well, I gave up work when I was 7 months pregnant with Sarah. And back then, more people did take time out when they had young children. And I thought, well, I'll probably have 2, and then when they're at school, I'll go back to work. But it didn't work out that way because I'd lost so much confidence to do that kind of work by then. and fitting it in around children. I know lots of people do it and do more, but I didn't have the confidence. So I just did some voluntary stuff, and as they got older, I started doing various little jobs. Like I helped a hemiplegic child in a school. I was paid for that, but it was just 2 mornings a week. But didn't really get any professional type work until after my divorce, after I'd done a degree, which I started in 1995, and it was a part-time degree in history, and finished in 2001. And then I did a training course to teach English as a second language, took the exams, and then I taught for a few years part-time teaching English. But all around that time was when I started my jazz. I wouldn't call it career exactly. Would you call it a career?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, look where you are today. So you're very much part of the jazz fraternity.
Well, yes. I mean, I was going to some jazz with my ex-husband. He liked jazz too. And we'd started going to quite a few we'd been to Ronnie's a couple of times, and we'd started going to like local things where you'd get a singer and small trios and stuff locally in restaurants and so on. And at home, he was playing classical, he was playing mainly quite heavy classical music a lot of the time. When we split up, I stopped listening to classical for a while. And my first thought was, I want jazz on. I want to play jazz. So I went out and bought more jazz CDs and played jazz at home all the time because I found it more uplifting. And then in 2004, it's 4 years after we've split, I joined Richmond Jazz School.
So what was the catalyst that made you join the college? Because I think you told me that you'd been going to that college for years.
I started going to that college before I even left school. My German classes with my mother.
Right.
I had to get her permission from the headmaster to go to an evening class to learn German. And we did it for 3 years, and it was in Kew Road then. Yeah, I think I was telling someone, I think it may have been Nettie I was telling about it just recently. Anyway, yeah, it was in Kew Road, and yeah, so that was really exciting for me. And it was the first time, because my school really wasn't very good at all. It's good now. It's a much better school now. Because I went to visit a few years ago, and I was really impressed with it, but it wasn't back then. And so I left with nothing because I'd missed a year in hospital, and there were no remedial teachers back then. I was just left to get on with it, even though I'd missed nearly a year of schooling. So I left early, and then I started evening classes, did all sorts of things. Pretty soon after that, drama, languages, shorthand and typing. Then I did a full-time course at Chiswick Polytechnic for 1 year when I was 18. And after that, that's when I joined World Records soon after that. Yeah, so music was always important to me, but it wasn't until I worked for World Records that it was like a central part of my life.
Right. And did you learn any musical instruments at all?
Nothing. Started ballet classes when I was 6, I think, and I only lasted 6 weeks, and my mother wouldn't let me go anymore.
Oh, I thought you told me you played the guitar.
Sorry?
I thought you played the guitar at some stage.
Oh, no, that was a lot later. That was when I was in my 40s.
Right.
No, late 30s, sorry.
Yeah. So you can play the guitar?
I did have 2 years of folk guitar classes, lessons at Richmond Adult College again. But the first year was nice because we were all beginners and we sang quite simple songs, like Where Have All the Flowers Gone and all things, sort of well-known folky things. And then there was no real, you'd have to jump then to the next class. There were only 2, like beginners. Then the next one, was mixed with everybody, people who'd been playing for years, and it was all very kind of country and westerny folky type stuff, and all guys wearing check shirts, and they'd have a night at a pub in Teddington, and I went along with my two friends who were in the first year with me, and we felt totally lost. We thought, we can't join in with this, and I didn't even like the music then. And I realised I didn't like country and western. We'd had a lot of country and western in my job too. We had Slim Whitman. Yes, we had Cliff Richard come to visit, and Slim Whitman.
This is World
back
Records.
At World Records,
right, yeah.
yes. And I had to go to a country and western fair somewhere. I can't remember where now. I really didn't like it.
Yeah, my dad used to listen to a lot of country and western. In fact, he was a Slim Whitman fan, I think.
I was passionate about classical music. I used to go to the proms on my own. I used to go to get the cheap tickets up at the top and take a newspaper, sit on a newspaper. All the young people did that then.
Why was that? Because the seats weren't comfortable or something? Well, there's no seats.
Well, you had to sit on the floor or stand.
Oh, I see.
So people would sit on newspapers or whatever. I'd go straight from work and stuff. Can't remember where I was working then, but yeah, and I loved it. So, but at the same time, I still loved musicals. I didn't really think about jazz. I just loved the feel of it until later. But when I started going to jazz events, a few jazz gigs, Ronnie's and so on, when I was still married, I realised I really liked it. But what really got me into the jazz duo thing and the jazz trio was when I was doing a dance class, again at Richmond Adult College. And afterwards, a group of us would go, it was called Biodonza. It was a kind of a relaxing, ethereal, new agey type dance. And this was when I was single again. We all used to go for a meal afterwards at this restaurant just round the corner opposite Richmond Station. I can't remember what it was called now. And there was this jazz duo there. And they played every week. And I asked her to do Blue Moon for me, because I said, I've always liked Blue Moon. Can you sing Blue Moon? And she did. And then after that, she always waited till I arrived to do Blue Moon. And we became friends. And I bought her CDs. And then I started at Richmond Jazz School. And by then I'd already got to know a lot of the songs from listening to them playing.
Great. So who was your first tutors at the college?
My very first tutor was, Fergus O'Kelly. Even that went blank for a moment, and I mentioned him yesterday. Fergus O'Kelly was lovely. He taught us the repertoire more than anything. He'd been on the radio a lot. He'd always been in the music world, I think. But he taught us the repertoire. He didn't teach us scatting or anything like that. He said that we should really respect the composer and the music he wrote before we go off on one. He didn't use that expression, but
yeah.
And I do like to do that. I always like to sing it more or less as it was written first time round, and then do it a bit differently second time round. So, and a lot of people do. But,
good strategy.
Yeah. But so we learned I was with him for a year and a half in his class, and then I went to Shireen Francis' class. I was really nervous going into that class because a lot of them seemed really good at the time.
So did you start to do any gigs in the college or outside the college?
Oh, well, I started getting involved in running jams, helping to run jams, but just some very funny memories just come back to me. When I was in Fergus's class, we had to get to a certain level before he could recommend that we sang in the cafe at lunchtime, because they always had a jam session in the cafe, and we'd all go to that. The classes were in the morning, and then we'd go straight to the cafe and listen to the jammers. And they were mainly from the higher classes, the more experienced people singing. But when he felt we were ready, he would say, "You can sing in the cafe now." And I was singing Every Time We Say Goodbye, and he said, too high. And he brought it down and down and down, because at the beginning I thought I was a soprano. So he brought me down and down to lower key. And then one day he said, yeah, that's good enough. You can sing in the cafe now. So I went into the cafe and sang, and everybody cheered, yeah, yeah, because it was my first one, like they always encourage people who are just starting out. And I happened to be going off to Paris to visit my cousin that day. So I went from the college to get the Eurostar. And then I went to a jam in Paris that she found for me. And I got up and sang it there, and they couldn't wait to get me off. They rushed through it because it was slow, and I probably wasn't very good. I wasn't out of tune. I could sing in tune, but I obviously wasn't it went to my head that I'd sung in the cafe and they'd all cheered. But the following year, I went back to that same place in Paris and I sang, and they were really nice to me then, and welcoming. So,
well, they could see your progress, probably.
Yeah, I don't know if they remembered me from the year before, but I remember she said, oh, you must come again. So I was really chuffed about that. I sang I Thought About You that second time, yeah. But by then, of course, I was really getting hooked on jazz and going to loads of gigs, and firstly going to see people I knew from the college in their gigs, and going out nearly every night, because I thought, well, I'm single now, I go out every night, because that's what single people do. Maybe one night in occasionally. And I was just going to lots and lots of gigs. Yeah, so where are we going?
So how did you start organising what would become the Swan?
Oh, the Swan Jam. Well, it was originally, it was originally at Rising Sun. And I started organising that because the guys who were running it got fed up. In father and son team. Jeff Farrell, you've met him, and his son Tom. And it was quite a good jam, but I think they were just finding it a bit annoying. They had too much to do. They had a lot of other stuff on. So they wanted to close it. So a group of us were really upset. So a friend of mine called Sue Christian, in that group, she and I decided to take it over. Well, she said to me, Janet, if you take it over, I'll help you. So that's what we did. They gave me their mailing list, so I could, by then, of course, it was all email and stuff, to take over. And we carried on running it for some time. And Nick Cooper got involved, so he was the regular pianist. And we had our regular players, guitarists coming, and singers. So then it started to get really popular, but then we had to move to different venues. And we had 2 or 3 venues before we got to the Swan. And it stopped because we lost one of the venues, or they changed hands or something. So I saw the Swan, or I heard about the Swan, or somebody suggested it. So I rang the guy up and went to see him. And he was really nice. He was a chef. Can't remember his name now. And he said we could try it there, and we did. And for a long time, it went very well. But then again, pub changed hands. Had people in who wanted the football on while we were playing, and all the rest of other sports. And so did that for a few years, and it was a very good experience. In fact, I met you there.
Yeah, I came once. Yeah, or twice, maybe more.
You were dragged along by a friend of yours because she wanted you to sing on her numbers, weren't you?
Well, I just wanted to do some more local stuff and find out some of the local stuff that was going on. Yeah, and she took me to that.
Yeah.
But I didn't know you ran it. She said it's somebody else was running it.
Well, I know, because she thought,
Mo Nazim, Mo's Jam, she called
it.
Mo,
yeah. Mo was our regular guitarist there, but he complained about it every week. But he carried on doing it. He said, I'm not coming to them, we're treated badly. They were given 3-day-old potatoes, reconstituted potatoes for their meal. And when I heard you, I knew you were really good, and asked you if you wanted to play on one of my gigs. And
yeah, it's great.
My T-Box gig, which ran for a few years in Richmond.
Yeah, tell me about the tea box gig, how that started.
Well, again, I went there to see some people I knew singing opera. Not very.
And this is a tea shop that was in Richmond, wasn't it?
A tea shop in Richmond, a specialist tea shop, that had all teas from just about everywhere and every tea you could name. And it was open in the daytime for meals as well, light meals. And they had entertainment some evenings at weekends. And they were licensed just for those events. And somebody I knew was singing opera. In fact, I knew her through jazz, but she and her mother were in an opera evening, and I decided to go along. And I thought, yeah, perhaps we can have a jazz night here. So I asked, and then I made an appointment. They said, come and see us during the week. So I went during the week to chat to them. So we decided to start up a jazz night. And the very first one, I can't remember which year it was. It was probably 2009 or 10, something like that. I had two guests, guest singers, Gary Bartlett and Pam Pecco-Smith. And I had a band put together. I couldn't find many people because it was summer, but I got some players. I won't go into the names because my memory's terrible. But, and some guy turned up and started asking questions and writing things down and taking photos for a magazine, which was a bit like Hello Magazine, but a local one, the Richmond something. It's not, I don't think it exists anymore. And I've still got a copy of it at home. There's a whole big page spread of us.
Great.
On that gig, that first night. So that kept going, and I had different singers every time.
That was a monthly event, yeah.
Sorry, once a month on a Sunday night. And I kept going for quite a long time. And then you came and joined and played from about 2012, I think, because that's when I first met you. And then it was you and Nick Cooper alternating after that on piano, on keyboard rather. And it kept going until things started to get dodgy. The business started to get dodgy. There were lots of other people putting music on there. So I stopped it, but it was a good experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Gave me the confidence to host things and introduce people and so on. And I loved the social side of it and the break, going around talking to everybody. I still love that.
Yeah. Well, it was like a blueprint of what went on, what we've gone on to do with Mood Indigo Events.
Yeah, that's true. Yes. Yeah, it was. We did, I think I did 3 songs to start with, and then one guest singer came up, or was it 4? Maybe 4. And then after the break, the second guest singer would come up, then I'd finish the night. So it got me to practice lots of songs as well. And I was having lessons, I think I was having lessons with Linley Weir at the time, and I'd go over the songs with her. And I was still going to college every week too, to the class. And it was nice being able to invite people who'd never sung in public before to do their first gig there.
Yes, it was like a vital step then, really, for new singers and
exactly.
people.
Well, Carl Charity did his first singing gig there, and look at him now. He's quite a star now. Yes, so he was playing the trumpet a lot at the gigs, and singing a little bit from time to time. But then I offered him a singing gig there, and after that, he took off.
Great.
Yeah.
So obviously then from running your tea box night, you then went on to, with, my help a little bit, run Janet's Jazz Night at Jazz Cafe Posque. So how did that start?
Oh, well, that was up after we'd started some other Mood Indigo stuff, wasn't it? After Retro,
I think we put a gig on in at the Pheasantry, and I think somebody came to that.
Oh, that's right. Yes, we put a gig on at the Pheasantry, and Tomasz came to watch, and then we started it was 2013 or 14, was it? We started Posque, Janet's Jazz Night. It wasn't my idea to call it that. It was everybody else's.
It's a good name.
Yeah. Yeah, and the first one, yes, it was very nerve-wracking the first time. And I had Mark Nesbitt as a guest. And
I think it was Alison Neal
Alison Neal, yeah.
as the instrumental guest, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was quite well supported. It varied a lot, but we had to build it up, really, didn't we? And then I mainly invited people I knew from Richmond Jazz School initially to come and sing there. And then I got to know more, a wider circle. And some were pros, semi-pros, some of them student singers.
But it's varied, isn't it? We've had people less experienced to people that were quite experienced but just wanted to do it because it was a great gig.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That was the good thing about it, yeah. But the musicians were always good. The musicians were always very
Yeah, we always got a really good kind of headline, guest or featured guest for the first set.
Yeah. And it was great because being further into town in Hammersmith, got a lot of people. It was right near the tube as well, so it was convenient for a lot of people. And being the Polish centre, cultural centre, we had a lot of young Polish people just popping in. They wouldn't be there at the beginning, but they'd come later in the evening, wouldn't they, and hang out at the bar. And so it wasn't dead there. I mean, we had quieter nights and, good nights and bad nights, but there were always people in there.
Yeah, it was always a good night, yeah. Yeah.
And Peter was the person who was in charge of our night, Peter Kazmatsky.
Sounds about right. It sounds good to me.
And he was very helpful. So that lasted a long time, didn't it? Up until COVID, didn't it?
Yeah. And did you continue to have lessons, or did you? I mean, it was looking from the outside, running those kind of monthly nights, and also when we started doing our jazz festival stuff, your confidence seemed to, grow. And in fact, for me, I think you learn more doing those things than you could ever learn in any classroom.
You're probably right. I think the lessons gave me a good kick start, but also the vocal technique was important, practicing and so on. And I learnt that did learn all that mainly with Linley, making all the right sounds and so on. And of course, I went on workshops abroad as well with Anita Wardell, and I went to one with them. Went to several in France, one in Isola, and some in this country as well, residential workshops. So, but you're right.
They get their little holidays as well, aren't they? They're very sociable again.
Well, the one in Isola was beautiful because it was such a lovely place, and I stayed in a hotel with a sea view, and you had free time to walk around the little town, and we did a big concert on the last night on a big stage in the town square. Yeah, so that was really exciting. That was back in 2014, I think, or 15, I'm not sure. But you're right. I think doing it is, gives you more confidence. And I still can't believe I do get up there and do it, but
yeah, from that shy person facing the wall to introducing these big events and things.
Yeah, but also I've tried hard not to keep comparing myself unfavorably with people I think are really good, because that doesn't get you anywhere.
No,
we're all different, and of course I'm never going to be like some people I really admire. I'm not going to even mention any names. I have to accept that I'm me, and that's the way I am, and I'll be the best I can. And I think I've kind of developed my own style more recently. And somebody said to me on Sunday, in fact, it was Lorraine, I said, I've had quite a few people recently saying, very positive things about my singing. And she said, I think it's because you're more relaxed now. she remembers me when I was really nervous in the early days.
Yeah, that will manifest in the performance.
Yeah, I used to shake like mad. I couldn't even pick up my glass of water because my hand would go like that. Now I've said it, I might start that again. But yeah.
When we play some songs later, everybody will be watching for the handshake. Yeah. So if you weren't doing Mood Indigo events, what would you know, is there anything else apart from music and jazz that's kind of taken over your life now? Is that your main?
Keeping fit's taken over my life, getting my steps every day, at least 12,000 or more. French, Duolingo French, that's another everyday thing.
Do you like having kind of some order, some sort of like routine? Does that help you?
I need a certain amount of routine. I know it sounds boring. Or also, because I'm on certain restricted diets now, I have to eat healthily and I have to eat the right foods. So that takes a bit more time. I can't just buy a pizza and stick it in the oven. You know, I have to cook everything and do everything properly. But I don't know, social life's picking up again now, isn't it? And I was hoping to do a writing course, memoir writing course at Richmond Adult College, but they didn't have enough people signed up.
We don't need to do one. They've done this.
Yeah. I need to write one as well. My daughter's insisting on it. Yeah, so, but sometimes and I've had a few vocal gigs recently with you and Nick or Richard in an art studio, which was lovely.
Yeah, and that's kind of, you really like that, again, because it's like an environment, a social environment.
Yes, when I saw it on the Nextdoor website, this American artist had started up this studio. It's a kind of an artistic hub just across the river from me in Hampton Wick. And she was having an open evening for people to come and look at the artwork and meet people. And I went along and I was so impressed. I mean, I loved the art. I didn't really understand it, but I loved it. But I just met so many lovely people. And in that kind of environment, nobody cares what age you are, what your background is, where you're from. Everybody is very welcoming. And when I said, well, I'm not an artist, they said, yes, you are. You sing jazz. You know, so I suppose it's all art, really. It is all art.
Yeah.
And so I went there a couple of times, and there was, then she invited me to do a gig there, and I did with you and Nick Leonard Webster. It was a freezing cold night, because it's in a kind of conservatory. You called it outdoors. I'd say more it was a conservatory. And we had fires there, but they weren't really good enough. We were freezing cold, but I still enjoyed it. I couldn't feel my feet by the end of the evening. But it went down really well. We did about 18 songs, or 19 songs. Oh, in fact, that was the day Stephen Sondheim, we heard the news that he died. And that's when I did Send in the Clowns to finish off the evening. And it turned out that she, Kate, the artist, had worked on his shows. She'd done lighting in the past on some of his shows.
Oh, wow.
So she was really appreciative that I did that song. She hadn't met him, but she worked on his shows.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we got invited back again, and then again. So and it wasn't quite so cold the other time.
No.
So we've done 3 there now. And there's another big event coming up where you're doing a trio gig, and I'm joining in for a few songs. But yeah, so that gave me a bit more confidence, because I'd almost decided, well, I think my singing days are over during lockdown. But that gave me more confidence again. And since then, we've done a couple of other things. A new Talking Tree gig in Staines this Friday gone. Yeah. So,
which is going to, with your night, which is going to be very similar to what you did at the Tea Box,
similar to Tea Box, yes. Yeah. So you've called our night Janet and Friends, which it's the same as when we did the jazz festival, TW12 Jazz Festival, and my set was Janet and Friends with different guests. So we've just had our first one, and one of the guests, Jill Cook, was somebody I met at jazz school, and she was in the advanced class. No, what did they call it? They didn't call it advanced. It was, I can't remember what they called, master class. She was in the master class when I joined, and she was only there for a while. Like most of those people, they became professional or semi-pro or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
But
Because it's a college that you never graduate from.
yeah,
It's
college
not-
you never graduate from. Yes,
You just keep going back
They
because it's
did.
social. Yeah, but
they graduated.
well,
yeah, but
that's what
you're
I'm saying, you
right.
can
A lot of
decide to-
people go on for years because they enjoy it,
Yeah.
and they get to play with other people.
yeah. So the social side of it, you just keep going. It's
Yeah, I can understand it a lot with sax players and trumpet players, etc., because they have the opportunity to play with a whole group of people regularly. Yeah, it's a good place.
Are they
Yeah.
still as strict? Until the teacher says you're ready to play in the jam session, or can anybody just join in?
I don't know how it works in the instrumental classes. I think once they feel confident enough, they can play in the cafe. But then the tutors bring their groups in, like Tony Woods, for instance, brings his students in. I don't know if all the students play at lunchtime in a group or whether just the more advanced ones do, because I don't know who's in the class. But well, I'd never knock it because I still go back there quite often at lunchtimes on Saturdays to see people and hear people play and sing. And
So it's a good hub. It's been a good hub for
and
you.
I still meet
Yeah.
some new people there, and I still sometimes go and see their end of term concerts. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so it brings us up to date, I guess, really. So have you got any current ambitions, things you still need to do, what you're working on now, what you want to do next, things you definitely don't want to do next, or whatever?
Oh, well, really just keep what we're doing going at the moment because we've got quite a few gigs every month. And now I've got the vocal one, which is only every 3 months. But and I hope to get more. I would like to get more gigs like the art gallery one, I must be honest. I'd like to get some gigs like that.
Great.
But yes, I love going off to Europe and visiting jazz clubs in European cities. Prague, Paris, Berlin. Where else? I think that's it at the moment. Oh, I did sing when I went to Turkey, or when I was in Istanbul. Well, apart from seeing Anita Wardell singing there, which was amazing, I actually sang somebody from my group that I was with, went up and asked these 2 guitarists who were playing on a cafe on the street if I could sing with them. And the only jazz song they really knew was, oh gosh, it's gone now. It's one of the really popular songs it's jazz, but it's also Autumn Leaves, yeah, Autumn Leaves. I said, you know any jazz songs? And they said Autumn Leaves. So we had to find the right key, and I sang Autumn Leaves on the street with amplification with these 2 guys in this restaurant, and some people from my hotel went past, and they were all teasing me about it the next morning at breakfast. But yeah, I love that. I love the European feel when you go to jazz clubs there. They're just amazing. And there are lots of young people there, but it doesn't matter when you're older. Everybody blends in together. And I was a bit cheeky because the last time I went to one of those Paris gigs, I got up and sang a song, and it was around the time of Brexit. And I said at the end of the song through the microphone, "Vive le jazz and down with Brexit." And they all looked really shocked, but then they all smiled, and then they were all hugging me.
Oh, that's nice.
I had to let them know I was against it.
Yeah.
Dead against it, and still am. But anyway, shouldn't get into politics, I suppose.
Good. So maybe some Mood Indigo Events gigs overseas then, Austria,
Yes.
Paris?
When I next go to Austria, which I hope will be this year with my daughter, to visit my family where I was au pair and some other families I know, other people, I'm going to do some research to see if there's any chance of doing a gig out there.
Brilliant. Well, on that note, thanks very much. Fascinating life story.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for sharing it with us.
I think I was all over the place, but
No, it was great.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Beautiful love, you're all a mystery. Beautiful love, what have you done to me? I was contented till you came along, thrilling my soul with your song. Beautiful love, I've roamed your paradise, searching for love, my dreams to realize, reaching for heaven, depending on you. Beautiful love, will my dreams come true? Beautiful love, you're all a mystery. Beautiful love, what have you done to me? I was contented till you came along, thrilling my soul with your beautiful song. Beautiful love, I've roamed your paradise, searching for love, my dreams to realize, reaching for heaven, depending on you. Beautiful love, will my dreams come true? Will my dreams come true? Will my dreams come true?